Hi, my name is Will, and today I want to talk a little bit about the process of pivoting from development, software development, to YouTube and film. What I'm planning on doing is giving a little bit of background on myself and my journey, and talk a little bit about the tools, the processes, how much money's involved, all that fun stuff, and just kind of walk you through how I'm approaching it. Maybe you want to make videos of your own someday. Maybe you're just curious as to how the process works. Maybe you're a software developer and you are thinking about all the changes in the world today, and you're interested in maybe a documentary about that. So first up, my background. I started as a software developer. I started coding when I was like 10. Since then, I've worked as an architect, a CTO. I've worked at big companies. I've worked at startups and everything in between. I started out doing desktop apps way back in the day, then web apps, and then web services at scale. Over the last few years, I also pivoted out of that a little bit and built a whole game on Unity that I shipped on Steam. So short of making a compiler or creating a new language, I kind of feel like I've done everything I wanted to do in the space with technology. And of course, the technology market itself is shifting a lot. And that's a huge topic, which would be the kind of thing I might cover later. One thing I was able to do was build and sell a consulting company, which is mostly focused on back-end services at scale, using CI and CD as the model. But that kind of marks the end of a stage, and now it really begs the question of what next. Back in the day when I was in high school, I actually was kind of a theater kid. I hung out with that crowd a lot, as well as my geeky friends. I did some improv work, and I did video editing as a side hobby. And then when I went to college, I actually majored in political science. It was actually more of a geopolitical focus from UC Davis, which is actually a feeder for the State Department. So that gave me sort of this foundation in thinking about the world from a political standpoint. But part of the reason I'm mentioning all this stuff is, and how all these pieces come together, is that's the past is helping drive what I want to do in the future. So for me, that's technology, it's politics, and some theater and video editing stuff. So all those pieces do kind of feel like they come together to being plausible to making videos. So I started getting a little more serious about it about a year ago, and I went ahead and I bought a real camera and some lenses and started just really learning in on learning how to use especially DaVinci Resolve. I've used Premiere and Final Cut Pro and Camtasia in the past. DaVinci Resolve has been a lot easier to learn, in part after working with Unity and using tools like Fmod for audio. So I started putting up some content on YouTube. One of my big videos was on developers, when will the tech jobs come back? That got over 200,000 views, and people are still watching it. And I've gotten over 500,000 views in the last year. Part of what makes me feel really good about that is YouTube gives me tons of metrics on, who's clicking, what are they clicking on, why. One thing that's been really nice is that once people actually click on the thumbnails, they tend to watch the videos, which is great. I've also really enjoyed the comments that I get from folks on the videos. That's been super fun. As I put up the video, and then for the next couple of days, I can just watch and respond to people. It's great. So after getting to 500,000 views, I've started to get a little bit of a sense of the YouTube strategy and insights on how to work with it. And people talk a lot about the algorithm and what is it. And it's kind of boiled down to just a couple of stages for me for how I put up a video. Basically, I come up with an idea for what I want to cover. Then I record the video, I edit it and all that good stuff. And then it's posting up with a thumbnail. The thumbnail is really the thing that's driving it. Basically, what happens is YouTube takes, whenever I put up a video, it takes a little while and it just sort of shows the thumbnail to people. And then do people click on it? So if I get a click-through rate of 1% or less, then I'll get a couple thousand views from YouTube, and they'll just say, like, you're done. But if I put up a video and the thumbnail gets maybe a 6% or higher click-through rate, which I've had videos do, then YouTube will just keep showing the video to folks as long as that click-through rate is staying good. Then the other metric, of course, is watch time and retention. If I put up a video with a great thumbnail, but then everybody bounces off once they actually start watching, then YouTube will penalize me for that. But fortunately, because the watch time and the retention's been high, then YouTube seems to be willing to put up, the algorithm at least, puts up the thumbnails, and then it all comes down to people clicking on them or not. So in a way, it's complicated, but it's also kind of simple, right? Do you have a thumbnail that people will click on, and then do people actually watch the video? Which, of course, the first thing that everybody gets interested in once you start talking about views and counts and stuff is, how much money do you make? I can't go into details about the specifics of it, but roughly speaking, you can say that for every 1,000 views, you'll get like $10 from YouTube. That varies dramatically because it depends on the keywords for the advertisers for what they're running. So hypothetically, if I was making videos about debt restructuring. That has been very competitive, and so I might get a much higher revenue from it. But the problem is that you'd have to figure out how you're going to do compelling video content about things like debt, or other channels that maybe do cars or cameras or things that are expensive that people buy. They might want to watch the reviews about. Those are the kinds of things that do well, and mine do fine. It's software engineering and computer and technology stuff, and so from what I can tell, it's been fine. You can just go ahead and use that basic math multiplier. If you want to get fancier about it, you can go to Google AdWords and you can start getting a sense of what the payouts actually look like. The next part, of course, is sponsorship opportunities. And there's ones that look more like ads or affiliate things inside. There's a few people where they actually will do a video where the whole video is sponsored. So far, I haven't been interested in doing any of that. I actually, once I became a YouTube partner, I think I must have gotten on some mailing list or something. I've gotten a whole deluge of sponsorship inquiries from different vendors. This is what I don't want to do, is accidentally wind up with a sponsor like, for example, one that was came up recently was Honey. So I don't want to go down that path. And right now, the revenue that they're offering is almost a little bit more of a distraction. I don't know if I'll pursue that at some point in the future. But right now, I don't think so. I'm perfectly happy with the revenue I get just from the ads and doing my own thing, and then also not having to embed sponsorship stuff inside the videos I make. There are two other pretty significant potential revenue sources. One of them is from Patreon, and there's a lot of reasons why people wind up doing Patreon. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. And then the other option for making money is just being a production company. And what I mean by that is, let's say that I do a bunch of videos and I keep getting views. And then I have a friend of mine who works at a company and they say, hey, I need a corporate video for something. So they might just call me up and then I can come out, do the video, and that's just a work for hire kind of situation. And so the more videos I make, the more credibility I have with doing that kind of thing. And the more videos I make of other kinds and formats and types gives me more credibility to make more money as a production company. So we've covered how the YouTube algorithm works a little bit. We've covered what some of the revenue options, and then that kind of comes back to the content and what am I actually going to make the videos about. If you look at my background, technology and software development, geopolitics, maybe some geoeconomic stuff, especially on the intersection of those, seems like a no-brainer. The challenge, of course, is that they're all kind of controversial topics right now. Like if I talk about AI and LLMs, a lot of people have a strong emotional reaction to that. And I don't need to tell you that geopolitics is a big complicated thing right now. So where do you want to spend your time, right? I do think that covering some of especially the geopolitical material as like little explainer videos might be useful and helpful. But the last thing I want to do is anything that looks like a politics daily news or anything like that. There's plenty of folks doing that. It's exhausting. I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Like I said, maybe a few explainer videos might be interesting to cover, especially to sort of say like, well, here's political science fundamentals, and this is how that plays out. The other thing that's kind of compelling and interesting about those intersections is things where it's like a documentary on some of the intersection between the tech and the culture. Let me give you an example, which is, living through the 90s when the internet was first coming up. That was a really cool, interesting place. There were a lot of things that happened in that point in time that affect everybody today. And so there could be some really interesting stories to tell about that. Some of the stuff with AI and robotics could be interesting, especially on the more documentary side. I understand how the technology works, so I think that means I can make some of the content and the documentary material cut a little deeper. That in turn kind of gets to the aspirational side. So, making videos for YouTube is actually really cool. And I like that I can put a video up and get an audience and people can watch it and check it out just like you're doing right now. It's awesome. The other half of that, though, is from a growth standpoint, is I do like the idea of slowly building up to getting to where I'm doing something that looks more like full-blown documentaries. It's a couple of things by way of example for inspiration. Keanu Reeves has a video or a documentary about digital and film and the differences between those things. Werner Herzog, huge inspiration. People like Rick Steves, right? He does all these amazing videos about Europe, and he works with a really small crew, and I think that's really cool. And so that sort of gets into some of the thing about documentary, like how much is the documentary just sort of reciting facts, or it really should be telling a story of some kind? Do you have character arcs, all that kind of stuff? So it's an interesting space to play. From a production standpoint, I want to start small, self-produced stuff. And part of that is like my approach to leadership and software development, which was I needed to know enough hands-on about what it meant to be a quality software developer, what good processes and things look like in order to be able to build and manage a team effectively. There are some folks who just sort of want to jump straight to I'm just going to do it, hire people, but then that becomes very expensive very quickly. If I can do the editing and production, like color grading and stuff like that myself, then I can keep the budgets low, but hopefully keep the quality up high. In terms of distribution, this is actually one of the things that I am pondering right now, which is how much do I want to, especially if I do get to where I'm doing documentaries, do I want to go look after things like film festivals or just simply stick with video platforms online, right? Like YouTube or other video on demand platforms or streamers or what have you, FilmMob, Tubi, Freebie, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm still exploring that space right now. If anybody has any experience or thoughts with any of that stuff and wants to chime in the comments, please do. Let's say that I make something, and if I can get 500,000 views, then that works out to about $5,000. And I'm already able to do that. If I can do that on an annual basis or in 6 months, I don't see any reason why I couldn't get to that point to where I could be doing it more frequently. So if you can get 5K, why not 10K? And at some point it's like, that's fine. The things like Patreon, if I do any sponsorships, especially for something like a documentary, that could be cool and that could add in a little bit more. And that's where I can get up to profitably doing a small production house. So what that means for me is my next steps are I get to keep learning about the production side. I have to go back and update the channel branding because I'm not going to be doing things like technology tutorials at this point. I don't think that makes sense. How much do I want to get into some of the more geopolitical content? And I think one of the ways to ground that a little bit, to not just make it opinion pieces, is probably to go ahead and focus on things like book reviews or talking about how books and the more detail and depth material connects to current events. So for example, if a new thing happens, and I've got hundreds of books I've read that I could talk about. So if there's a new event, I think maybe taking a 10-minute little summary of how this book and the material in it connects to the events today, I think might be a good way to structure that. And if I keep doing that, that helps me get to practice building out my editing and my style for future documentary work. And then also build up a Patreon community. So I need to get all those things set up. So hopefully all these thoughts are interesting to you. I would invite you to stick around and, do all the things, follows and subscribes and hit the bell and all that good stuff, especially if you're interested in the process. I want to do behind the scenes stuff on how I put all this material together, even how I'm shooting these videos right now. And then as I scale it up, challenges that I'm running into, talk about any of the future documentary stuff I'm going to be doing. And of course, just all the crazy world that we're in right now. There's a lot of stuff that I'm hoping to be able to talk about and help people process and understand, maybe even feel a little bit better about the future. Because right now, a lot of folks are pretty justifiably worried about everything from their jobs to the state of the world today. So I'm hoping I can cover material that'll help out with that. If you get a chance before you head out, go over to changenode.com and pop in your email address. And it's just me. So, you're going to get an email from me when I've got an update or news. And if you have any thoughts or want more information on any of this stuff, let me know in the comments. Take care. Thanks. Have a good one.